Hello and welcome to another video on this channel. Today we're doing a Tori Amos deep dive as I rank all of her official albums in celebration of the release of her newest work, In Times of Dragons, that came out on May 1st, 2026. In fact, you can check out a live react video I did for it right here on this channel. I'll link it somewhere. If you're a longtime Tori Amos fan, I would love to hear your rankings and why you love the albums that you do. I was a huge Tori fan in the 90s and even saw her live for the Plug Tour in support of the Choir Girl Hotel album. But I will admit that I stopped listening to Tori for a bit during the 2000s for a bunch of reasons, but mostly because I wasn't connecting with the music she was making compared to her earlier work. In fact, I think Choir Girl Hotel was the last of her albums that I bought because even To Venus and Back didn't really impress me that much at the time. And you'll find out soon enough in this ranking why I'm not a big fan of this era of Tori. But then she released Unrepentant Geraldines in 2014 that, while not perfect, felt like a bit of return to form for Tori. It was just her unfiltered voice, the piano, some light arrangements, and beautiful melodies. This made me go, let me give Tori's discography a whirl and see if I missed some gems during my hiatus. I'm happy to report that while my opinion of Tori's 2000s input hasn't changed much, some of her later albums made it very high on this list. Now, if you're newer to Tori Amos, here's a little background on this very influential singer-songwriter before we get going. Tori was born in 1963 in Newton, North Carolina. She began playing the piano at the age of 2 and was admitted to the Peabody Institute at just 5 years old. She was eventually kicked out for not following their strict classical curriculum. Fortunately for us, she continued playing the piano and singing. Her father would even accompany her as a teenager as she performed around gay clubs in Washington, D.C. Tori did release an album in 1998 called Why Can't Tori Read, but she even admits it was not her best work. Her record label was definitely trying to sell her as a pop rock act, which Tori claimed in an interview with Rick Beato to be a fifth-rate Pat Benatar, and she's not wrong. That album flopped and Tori felt very dejected, but at the same time found herself as an artist. She did away with the heavy rock arrangements and let her voice and piano take center stage. In 1992, she released what many fans considered to be her true debut album, Little Earthquakes, which helped define alternative pop music in the 90s and beyond, influencing and paving roads for artists who blended the intimate singer-songwriter approach with big pop arrangements and production like Fiona Apple, Sarah McLachlan, Regina Spektor, Florence and the Machine, Paula Cole, Alanis Morissette, and the list goes on. What makes Tori stand out from her peers, however, is how she blends this pop sensibility with her classical piano background. Her lyrical content is also very personal and unfiltered, to the point where it can sometimes be difficult to interpret. It's as if she's having a direct, intimate conversation with her listeners about deeply personal topics such as sexual abuse, broken relationships, female empowerment, and later in her career, motherhood, and even her miscarriage. This openness is what endears her to her extremely loyal fan base. This personal touch is especially evident in her live performances, which can sometimes feature just her and her famous Bossendorfer piano. If that's not intimate enough, she frequently pauses between songs to speak with the audience. If you don't enjoy artists talking between songs, seeing Tori live might not be for you. For this ranking, I just went up Spotify's discography of Tori Amos. I did not include two albums, which are Why Can't Tori Read, which, guys, if you're a Tori fan, you should go back and listen to. It's not a terrible album, but it's definitely not the Tori that we're used to. It's overproduced, loud, a lot of guitar, but there are some gems on there. Also, I didn't include the soundtrack to her book, Tori and the Muses, because I just saw it as too much of a side project. Like, the main project was the book, and it just happens to have this music. You can find it on YouTube, though, and it's worth listening to. It's about 30 minutes long. Real nice music. So with that business out of the way, let's begin our ranking, and don't forget to put yours in the comments below. Alright, and now for our number 18 album on the list. It's going to be Abnormally Attracted to Sin from 2009. And I'm sorry guys, I'm going to be a little rough on this album, but man, it feels like an afterthought. Given how talented Tori is, she does her best to make it a listenable afterthought. Still, By having zero punch, this album quickly became background noise for me. I actually stopped my Tori listening marathon like right here. And it wasn't conscious, I just never went back to listen to the next song for a day and then a week and then a few months. One of the biggest issues I had with Abnormally Attracted to Sin is how, for lack of strong material, Tori goes hard on some of her Toryisms to the level of self-parody. The title track is a perfect example of this. Abnormally Attracted to Sin has 9 syllables, but Tori manages to suck about 20 out of that phrase. In other words, there's a lot of breath singing and nasal squeaks and sing moaning and not too many melodies or riffs that stuck with me. Other songs like 500 Miles sound super confused. One minute it has this bad indie country vibe. She could have sold this song with a few tweaks to some upcoming artists in that vein. Later it tries to sound like classic Tori by shifting melodies, but it all sounds really contrived. Finally, the track ends on a heavy rock and roll note for no discernible reason. Like this album, it's a song of sometimes interesting thoughts which never find a clear voice. Many of the other tracks sound like lesser versions of Tori's earlier work. Starling, for example, starts out promising and even a bit reminiscent of Spark from Choir Girl Hotel, but unlike the latter, it doesn't have anything pertinent to say, nor does it seem confident enough to try. Lady in Blue also sounds a bit like a ripoff of Space Dog from Under the Pink, but again, just not as inspired as the original. I did dig the rock progression in this one though. Sadly, this is one Tori album that is actually hard for me to listen to, and it was a chore to get through it for a second and third listen just to be sure I hadn't missed something for this video. Where most of our other albums got a bit more love after a re-listen, this one made me beg for it to end. My favorite songs are Mary Jane, it's cute but too on the nose, you can tell by the name, right? Fast Horse, minus the forced southern drawl, it's a cool little song. I could see this having been played on Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. And then there's Maybe California. It's a beautiful song with a nice melody, but kinda boring. It doesn't bring anything new to the table. And now for album number 17, American Doll Posse from 2007. American Doll Posse is a concept album where Tori takes on 5 alter egos based on Greek mythology and writes and sings a collection of songs from their perspective. In theory, that sounds intriguing, but in practice, man, does this album drag. The arrangements are pretty bland, and the songs, while not terrible, didn't grab me at all. Tori leans into some heavier rock on this album, loud guitars and all. Unfortunately, and this will be a running commentary for this ranking, Tori just doesn't convince me as a frontwoman for a straight up heavy rock band. When the sound is too big, Tori's voice gets lost in the mix. Maybe that's why her actual first album, Why Can't Tori Read, never picked up steam. My favorite songs on this album are Big Wheel. This track does have a great kick and a nice country feel to it. Tori sounds like she's having a bit of fun here, but she never pulls me into the fun with her. And then there's Girl Disappearing. This is a perfectly executed little ballad that benefits from a minimalist production. That said, there's a version of this song in one of her later albums which I prefer much more because the arrangements are better. And finally, Code Red. Again, this song shows Tori stretching her musical muscle. I wish this whole album could have kept to the quality of this sound. And now for our album number 16 on the list, The Beekeeper from 2005. This album is a bit more stripped down than the entries we've seen so far. The focus is clearly on Tori's voice and the piano. This definitely uplifts the work, but unfortunately I just didn't feel the work was that inspired. The Beekeeper is not a bad listen though, just not enough stands out to put it higher on this ranking. In the end, I see this album as a perfectly good collection of songs that had zero impact on me. My favorite songs were Parasol. This is a cute little pop-tinged ditty with a charming chorus. Not much happens beyond that, but it's not a bad track. Sleep with Butterflies. It's a beautiful melody, but a bit too sugary for me on the chorus. Still, it showcases Tori's power as a melodist. And then there's Toast. This song is very stripped down. I love it when Tori leans on her country side. And now for our album number 15, Midwinter Graces from 2009. If you really need a Tori Amos Christmas themed album, well, here you go. The silver lining is that she sounds great, and the more organic production, which showcases her piano and some lovely string arrangements, is a breath of fresh air after her rock and roll inspired phase. My only real issue is that I'm not really a fan of Christmas themed music. In other words, this is not a terrible album and it's totally listenable. It just leaves zero impression on me based on my personal taste. My favorite songs are Holly Ivy Rose. I love the medieval flair in this song. It builds to a great crescendo. And then there's Pink and Glitter. This track flirts with jazz. I wonder sometimes what would happen if Tori dug her heels into more jazz influence in her pop songs as opposed to classical. She definitely has the chops for it. And finally, Snow Angel. This song is simple and sweet with a pretty chorus that, though very melodic, doesn't ever sound syrupy. Up to now, all the albums I've mentioned were first-time listens, although I think I put American Doll Posse on once back in the day and it just didn't grab me. And that leads me to my first re-listen, but actually paying attention to it because I remember not being grabbed by anything from this 1999 album, which also is our number 14, and it's called To Venus and Back. For this ranking, I had to listen to this double album twice to truly appreciate it. I liked it much more on second listen, but a lot of the issues I'd had with it on first listen persisted. For me, Tori just doesn't always translate well when she decides to play around with quote-unquote hip rhythms and electronica. Her music loses its personality in tricky melodic structures as it gets buried under the oftentimes overproduced tracks. On top of that, Tori's voice tends to get drowned out by the amount of busy instrumentation. I just can't connect with her as a singer when the wall of moaning and repeated vocal runs overwhelms the song. This is most evident in songs like Datura and Spring Haze, which have interesting atmospheres but lose steam for me behind these tired beats. The live part of this album is pretty unimpressive. Most of the songs sound like Tori is still trying to work out exactly what she wants to do with them. When she does manage to get a few good ones in there, it only makes the half-baked songs stand out even more. Tribal drumming and cool scratchy feedback guitars do not equal an interesting take on an old song. In the end, this album can be described as having a lot of great ideas, some interesting seeds of melodies, but no real substance. It's a lab. And when I started treating it as a lab, I began to appreciate it more. My favorite tracks were Juarez. Despite Tori's vocals and lyrics being lost in the mix, the instrumentation around this track is pretty cool. This is Tori going all in on her electronic romance. And then there's Bliss. This is a cool little song that explodes into a pretty catchy rock pop chorus. Again, I feel this style doesn't always serve Tori's more delicate voice so well, but she manages to pull it off beautifully here. And finally, Sugar. This is a great live track and probably the best version of this song, one of Tori's most famous that never ended up as an official track on any album. Now, it may seem like I'm just ragging on Tori Amos here. I swear I'm a fan. I really am. It's just these albums in the 2000s when Tori started experimenting with drums and guitars and all this electronica, it just didn't connect with me. And it just is what it is. This list does get better though, guys, trust me. But unfortunately, we have to talk about another album I'm not a huge fan of, and it's the 2001 album Strange Little Girls, which is our number 13. This concept album, where we see Tori singing a lot of covers, has its moments as she goes full-on rock and roll frontwoman. I want to like Strange Little Girls a little more than I do, but as most of you have gathered by now, I never really connect fully to Tori when she explores her heavier side. This doesn't mean the album doesn't kick some ass when needed. This album makes me wonder what version of Tori Amos we would have if her infamous rock album, Why Can't Tori Read, had made a bigger pop culture impact. The covers are where the album is more up and down. There isn't much of anything new Tori brings to each song aside from her unique delivery. For example, her minimalist version of Eminem's Bonnie and Clyde is certainly intense, but there isn't much that Tori does to really elevate the song beyond it being interesting to hear a tale of misogyny and murder told by another woman. Other times, this bare skin formula works fine. Enjoy the Silence and I'm Not in Love showcase both the beauty of the original melody and lyrics while showcasing Tori's gorgeous voice and piano work. My favorite songs are Enjoy the Silence. This is one of my all-time favorite songs, period. It's tough to beat the original, but Tori manages to make the song her own with her light piano arrangement. Then there's I'm Not in Love. This song follows the same intimate style of Enjoy the Silence and comes off sounding like a song Tori could have written herself. And finally, there's Strange Little Girls. Guys, I actually don't like this song, but it just sticks in my head. And I don't know, this song just sticks in my head. So I love it by default. And now let's move on to our number 12 album, Gold Dust from 2012. Gold Dust is an album where Tori reworks some of her classic tracks with a full orchestra. This ends up serving two purposes. One, it's essentially a greatest hits compilation as she digs into some of the highlights of her recording career. Two, it's proof of how production and arrangements can completely change a song. There's some tracks on here that I either ignored or really didn't like on first listen in their original form, but Tori gives them new life on this album with these interesting arrangements. My favorite tracks are Flavor, proof that great production is the key to a great song. I had heard this one on her album Abnormally Attracted to Sin, but while not hating it, it also left no mark. On Gold, I immediately saved it to the playlist. Girl Disappearing. Like Flavor, the original version is really nice, but this one reeled me in right away. And finally, Silent All These Years. There's not much you can do to improve on this song, and Tori is smart to play it straight. Her more mature delivery is what makes this track special. And now for our album number 11 on the list, Unrepentant Geraldines from 2014. This was Tori's first full-blown pop album in a while. Again, she leans on more acoustic arrangements and a less cumbersome production, which allows her voice and melodies to take us on her journey. To top it off, she dips in some southern country rock vibes to give the whole album a chilled saloon singer feel. I could imagine her performing these songs in some small town on the outskirts of somewhere out in America. Though there aren't any single tracks here that really stood out to me on first or even second or third listen in the sense of catchy hooks or melodies, the album still manages to have a clear vision of its sound, mood, and message, making it a strong return to form for a mature Tori Amos. My favorite songs are America. This song has an old-timey feel to it that I appreciate. There's little pretense needed in the arrangements for a song that is already constructed so well. I also love 16 Shades of Blue. This song is pretty straightforward and I like the message coming from an older woman who understands how society views women at different ages and phases of their lives and careers. And then there's Trouble's Lament. There's an urgency to this song, like a sense of dread that's really cool. I love the whole feel of this album. And we have reached our top 10, and it starts with 2026's In Times of Dragons, Tori's most recent release as of the date of this recording. It's a very conceptual album full of mystical creatures and very real dragons that hold the key to release both good and evil onto the world. If that confuses you, welcome to the world of Tori. It does start to make sense after a while. This is the first Tori album that I've listened to on the day of release since From the Choir Girl Hotel, so I was very excited for it. I enjoyed it on the first listen and even more on the second. This is probably the most cohesive album for me since Scarlet's Walk, and we'll talk about that album later. Not only thematically but sound-wise. Each song fits perfectly with the one that came before, like chapters in a book. Tori also continues to lean into her lower register to effect. In fact, the weakest parts of the album for me were tracks like Song of Sorrow that had huge arrangements and sweeping melodies that Tori's current vocals can't carry like before. That said, she never embarrasses herself on this album, and when she leans into her witchy whisper of a voice to tell her stories, I was very enthralled. I also thought this was one of the best mixed albums I have heard from Tori in a while. Sometimes Tori can sound small depending on how loud the backing band comes in. On this album, she sounded majestic over intricate smoky arrangements that rode all over the lower register of her piano. In Times of Dragons sees Tori maturing into the later part of her career. It's one of my favorite eras in an artist's life. 90s Dylan and Patti Smith are as good as their early stuff for me. Same goes for Joni Mitchell, Miles Davis, Billie Holiday, the list goes on. These are all artists whose physical changes can be felt and heard on their later albums. These changes drive their art in different directions. Tori hasn't quite shed her old skin yet, but I feel this album serves as a teaser. Later stage Tori might brew us up some genuine classics. My favorite songs are Saint Teresa. This song has an airy feel to it with a good dose of 80s era prog rock, all filtered through Tori's unique melody and delivery. Here her voice sounds ethereal and urgent, quite possibly my favorite track on the album. Provincetown. I admit the opening of this song didn't grab me at first because it has that huge production that I don't think Tori can pull off that well anymore, but then that harpsichord comes in. She should have led with that, but everything is forgiven. This song is deliciously good. It gets better with every listen, even that lush chorus. Tempest. That piano intro over the rolling drums is worth the price of admission alone. This song flows beautifully and showcases how Tori's melodies can flow in whatever direction she chooses. And now that we've entered the top 10, here's an extra track. Gasoline Girls. The piano playing here is Tori Amos reminding everyone that she is a virtuoso. Her fingers pop effortlessly over a fun melody that explodes into a rock chorus. Her constrained voice gives the song a unique vibe that I can't describe, but I love. Even when the song explodes into a hard rock chorus, Tori sounds poised and burning bright in her own flame. And now for our album number 9, Native Invader from 2017. This album continues Tori's melodic and more classically influenced approach since 2011's Night of the Hunters, which we will talk about later. And even when the album explores denser soundscapes, it never loses focus on Tori and the piano. Native Invader is ultimately a long journey through Tori's fantastic mind, where she begins to surrender to the energies of an older woman and mother to new generations. She has earned this space, and here she's not afraid to present herself as a mature woman with wisdom to share. The production on this album is also very good, although there are some moments where the balance between vocals and instruments could have been a little bit better. Tori's voice fits perfectly into the safe environment she created for our journey, and it's an enjoyable journey. My favorite songs are Reindeer King. Tori feels ethereal here. I love the balance between atmosphere and melody. This song carries a strong message about returning to our best selves. Climb, more subtlety, blending sophisticated pop with touches of folk and vocal harmonies. It doesn't try to do more than it needs to, and that works. Cloud Riders is a mellow song with several melodies within melodies. It creates a cool mood that fits well with the overall vibe and atmosphere of this album. And then there's Bats. This song has a pleasant, light tone with beautiful melodies and harmonies. I like it when Tori gives in to the light rhythms and acoustic arrangements to showcase her voice and let it carry the song. And now for our number 8 album, Scarlet's Hidden Treasures from 2004. And I guess this album is a little bit of cheating because it only has 8 songs, and they were the songs that were left out of Tori's 2002 album called Scarlet's Walk. But they were so good, I just had to put it on this list. I have no idea how Tori chose which songs she was going to leave out, because for me, they're just as good as the ones on the main album. Hidden Treasures is a chill album, but with a slightly heavier production than Scarlet's Walk. But it shows Amos in total control of her talent and musical vision. My favorite tracks are Ruby Through the Looking Glass. It's tied with Amber as my favorite from this phase, subtle yet impactful. And then there's Bug a Martini. I love the production and the arrangement on this one. It's funky yet relaxed at the same time. It's Tori in total chill mode. I love it. And then there's Seaside. This song is very reminiscent of her Boys for Pele era, which I like because the track features only Tori and her piano with a beautiful melody. And then there's Apollo's Frock. This track is over 8 minutes long. Tori's piano takes the music to several beautiful corners, and her voice and lyrics are strong and coherent. And now for our number 7 album from the Choir Girl Hotel from 1998. And guys, what an album, what a bunch of songs. This is Tori's first attempt to play in a bigger musical sandbox after her first 3 more piano-based albums. On Choir Girl, she utilizes a full band and fiddles around with electronic beeps and other more non-traditional rhythms and arrangements. This is something that she would continue to do through most of the 2000s to varying degrees of success, but I feel that this album is where the blend of organic sounds and technology feels the most potent and natural. The only downside of Choir Girl for me is the slow numbers. Most of them are overly dramatic and the production is way too much, which takes me slightly out of the album. It's too syrupy. But then Tori closes with Playboy Mommy and Pandora's Aquarium and I Am Back In, and it's an album that I revisit a lot because of those two songs especially. And my favorite tracks are Pandora's Aquarium. It's melancholic, it's bluesy, it's delicate. It's really one of Tori Amos's best. Cruel. This one has a lot of vocal fry over heavy beats. I usually avoid that, especially with Tori Amos, but here this style works perfectly, like someone discovering new musical toys. Liquid Diamonds. Further sonic exploration with ambient beats, excellent for listening with headphones. Tori is in her groove. And finally, Black Dove January. I love the journey of this song. Here, Tori finds the right formula to be a rock star and also something light and focused on her piano and keyboard. This song shows the power of Tori Amos's vocals when she was at her peak. And now for album number 6 on our list, Little Earthquakes from 1992. Tori's major label debut is also her most accessible pop album. The songs more or less follow traditional songwriting structures and the production value is made for radio. For her first album, she sounds confident and her lyrics and subject matter is both daring and creative. The record does drag a bit in the middle with 2 overly long and pretty melodramatic numbers, Mother and China. Aside from that, this album is a great intro to Tori, but it only scratches the surface of what she can bring to the table as far as her melodies, song construction, and sonic landscapes. My favorite songs are Tear in Your Hand. This is my favorite Tori song, period. It has a nostalgic tone with a light yet grand arrangement. It's a breakup song that's both sad and comforting. Precious Things. This song is a classic example of the dynamic changes that Tori uses a lot in her music. Here it still sounds innovative. On later albums it might sound a bit gimmicky. This song is heavy. Tori is in total control. Winter. This is a perfect ballad, emotional without being over the top. The orchestration almost dominates the song, but thankfully the balance is perfect and we have one of the most beautiful slow songs on the album and in Tori's career. And finally, Silent All These Years. This song is the theme for Tori's fight against violence against women. It tells the story of a person who can't find their voice during a bad relationship, even though their inner voice wants to rise above all of their suffering. It's a beautiful song with great emotional impact and one of Tori Amos's most famous. For Little Earthquakes, I'm going to deviate a little bit from the norm and mention one more song, and it's Me and the Gun. This song is sung a cappella. It's near the end of the album, and it might be triggering for some because the lyrics talk about an assault that Tori suffered in the back of a car. But it's a very powerful song. But just be aware that that song is on there, but it is beautiful. And we have entered our top 5. Welcome if you made it this far. Now, you just heard me mention 5 songs for Little Earthquakes, but officially now for our top 5, I'm going to be picking 5 favorite songs for each album. And it's going to open with a classic from 1994, our number 5 album, Under the Pink. There really isn't a bad track on this, Tori Amos' second album. Here she is in total control of her instrument and takes us on a beautiful journey inside of her musical mind, mixing elements of pop and rock with chamber music and a slight touch of the avant-garde. Furthermore, the production is clean and tight, especially compared to Little Earthquakes, allowing Tori's voice and piano to be the true protagonists on this album. My only issue with Under the Pink, and it's a minor one, is how similar most of the tracks sound. God and Pretty Good Year opened the album with flair, going from light to heavy to funky in a wink. But then the album decides to slow down for a while with some beautiful music to listen to in a quiet room or with some headphones on. Cornflake Girl does bring the spirit up a bit, and Waitress is cute. Tori screaming I believe in peace, bitch was a big thing at the time. But then we are back into chill mode again. Don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing. These songs are gorgeous and classics. They just don't make the album my first choice when I went to listen to Tori. I reserve Under the Pink for special moments, when I'm in the right mood and headspace to absorb all the beauty that it offers. And I'll say one more thing about Under the Pink since it does open my top 5. Just as I consider the first 5 or 6 songs of Little Earthquakes a great example of Tori's more pop side, here the last 5 songs, starting with Cornflake Girl and ending with Yes Anastasia, are a great example of Tori's more pianist instrumental side. The songs that make up this end of the album depend as much on the piano and arrangements as Tori's voice to tell their stories. Oh, and she makes a reference to Patti Smith in one of the songs, enough said. My favorite songs are Cornflake Girl. This was the first Tori Amos song I ever heard. I felt like I had been run over by a musical tractor. I'd never heard anything like it. It's a favorite of mine, and that piano solo at the end is breathtaking. This song also demonstrates Tori's sense of humor and fun. This is definitely the most upbeat song on a much calmer album. Pretty Good Year. This is one of Tori's best album openers. The subtle piano riff lulls you into a tranquil comfort until the bridge takes you into a heavy rock chaos and then back to tranquility again. Tori manages to balance this perfectly in a song I always return to when I think about what I've accomplished, or not, in the last 12 months. God. God is a funky and mysterious song. The band is prominent but always perfectly complementing Tori's vocals. Here Tori shows her full witchy side, something she only flirted with in Little Earthquakes. Her claim here is that God doesn't always help and that maybe he needs a woman to take care of him. If it's Tori, he'll be in good hands. Yes, Anastasia, nothing gets me more excited than when I see a Tori song that's longer than 6 or 7 minutes because I know we're going to go on a wild piano ride. This song breaks the 9-minute mark and I'm here for every second of it. Under the Pink is an album where Tori makes it clear that her piano is as much a protagonist as she is in her songs. And finally, Space Dog. The B-side of Under the Pink is full of surprises and very complex and robust arrangements. Space Dog is one of those songs that seems like 2 songs until the movements meet in a beautiful and moving ending. And now for album number 4 on our list, Ocean to Ocean from 2021. Tori's voice and delivery are confident on this collection of 11 songs. Once again, the leaner production allows her talents to shine even when she messes around with more ambient soundscapes and beats. Right from the first song, Tori places me right where she wants as she delicately flows through a mature collection of songs. I feel that a lot of great artists tend to go through a phase where it seems like they're trying to outdo their earlier work. And then when they let go of that pressure, as an older artist, the art begins to flow again. For me, Ocean to Ocean is a great example of this. Less frills and more thrills. My favorite songs are Addition of Light Divided. I love the melodies in this song. Tori's voice is more restrained on this album, but she makes good choices with the arrangements in a simple and beautiful song with a magical feel. Water, Metal, Wood. This song is a perfect example of how the right percussion and arrangement only complements Tori's melodies and vocals. This song starts off somewhat ethereal, but soon arrives at its earth elements, water, metal, and wood. 29 years, Tori is totally free with her melodies and delivery on this track, going straight from pop to something in the style of call and response a la Yoko Ono or Talking Heads. It's a delightfully fun track that sounds lively and vibrant with its light reggae groove. Speaking with Trees, what an amazing song. It starts tribal and earthy and then soars to the ethereal Tori in the chorus. It's a perfect blend of styles and the song I return to often. Swim to New York State. This is a ballad without much pretension that focuses on Tori's soft vocals and that carefully structured melody. And now for our number 3 album, Night of the Hunters from 2011. For me, Tori went through a somewhat complicated phase for about a 3 or 4 album stretch. In my view, she finally emerged out of that blander phase with this collection of songs, which was a collaboration with the recording label Deutsche Grammophon. In Night of the Hunters, Tori leans heavily on her piano, as the songs here are inspired by classic themes from classical music. The results are on par or even exceeding her earlier work. It's hard to pick a favorite song from this album because they all melt seamlessly into each other. The only thing I don't really like about Night of the Hunters is Tori's daughter Natasha singing. It sounds a bit pretentious. She enunciates to a fault, poor girl. Those songs aren't terrible though, and when I play the album from the beginning, I don't feel a need to skip them. They did not make my album playlist though. To close, I do feel like Tori's strongest albums are those that seem to have a single unified idea or musical character running through all the tracks, making it feel like we're stepping into a delightful book or film. This album creates a mysterious and enjoyable listening experience with an atmosphere that is unique to Tori. Although they were hard to pick out, here are my favorite tracks. Shattering Sea, perfect production and vocals. No Frills, this song is simply Tori being excellent. This song opens the album in style and makes it clear that we're entering a more classically inspired world. Carrie, this is a ballad as beautiful as anything Tori has ever written. Sometimes her slow songs get a little too melodramatic for me, but here she holds it together just right. Star Whisperer. This song is 9 minutes of Tori traveling through melodies full of twists and turns with a light and intriguing arrangement. I love this classic side of Tori that I feel she only really showed off in Under the Pink. Battle of Trees. This is another journey. The song is 8 minutes long and floats in the ear with a subtle yet complex melody. Despite the various paths this song takes, it never loses its way. And finally, there's Fearlessness. This song has a powerful message and it's beautiful. The arrangements and chorus flourish with spirit as Tori flows through it all with her impeccable piano playing. And we have reached our number 2 album, and it's Scarlet's Walk from 2002. The first time I listened to this album was to make this ranking, and it's a major highlight from a period in Tori Amos' career in the 2000s that I'm not a huge fan of. In fact, I skipped this album completely when it was first released because I did not like the first single, A Sort of Fairy Tale, and it's still not one of my favorite Tori Amos songs. But aside from that, this album is very good. It has a certain clarity and firmness that isn't present in many of Tori's work from that era. Scarlet's Walk feels like a warm, cozy garment that fits perfectly the first time you put it on. I imagine that's the intention, as the album is thematic. It traverses the United States, Scarlet's Walk, and explores the psychological and political side of the country after the 9/11 attacks. Along the way, Tori examines American history, indigenous peoples, and themes of identity and betrayal. This album also perfectly showcases how incredible Tori sounds with a band when the production and arrangement are lighter and the other musicians add the right touches to support her vocals and piano instead of just filling up the room with random little noises to sound cool. The richness and consistency of the sound here also makes it difficult to choose a favorite song. Scarlet's Walk functions as a long journey through Tori's world. But here we go. My favorite tracks are Amber Waves. This track is clear and vibrant. Here, Tori sounds super confident, navigating intricate rhythms and melodies without ever seeming forced. It sets the light and fluid mood for what is one of her best albums. Don't Make Me Come to Vegas. This is the kind of Tori song I like the most. It sounds like she could be playing it for the birds on her balcony on a warm spring morning. I Can't See New York. This is a song about lost love that's pure atmosphere and feeling, and it's absolutely beautiful. Tori goes into complete goddess mode, building this song from scratch and building strong images that remind the listener of the tragedy of 9/11. Carbon. This song begins with light piano touches but ends up surrendering to splendid rhythms and arrangements. Tori's voice is clear and the chorus with its harmonies is very beautiful. This song moves like water, which is the overall vibe of this album. Virginia. This song builds its melodies and harmonies into something remarkable and very Tori. It's not a song of strong hooks, but of strong feeling and emotion. It is what the album offers most, a sonic tapestry of Tori's making. And we have made it to number 1, and it's the 1996 album Boys for Pele. I can still remember the first time I heard this album. I was immediately drawn in by the first Hey and Beauty Queen. It's a short note that opens things up and takes us straight to the piano ballad called Horses. From then on, it's all good stuff with an album with perfect mixing, which shows Tori Amos flirting with various different sounds, including the famous introduction of the harpsichord to her music. And boy, does it sound good. What I love most about Boys for Pele is how the album builds track by track. It starts with just vocals, then vocals and piano, then comes vocals and harpsichord, then piano with a bit more orchestration, then boom, comes the insane track Professional Widow with harpsichord, piano, in rhythm, showing Tori leaving all delicacy behind and diving head first into a sensual mix of sounds that are all her own. Boys for Pele was also Tori Amos's longest album up to that point, and I admit that some of the tracks are a bit weak. First, I never really liked Tallulah. This song is kind of a precursor to what Tori would start exploring much more in subsequent albums, with somewhat uneven results, syncopated and funky beats. This song did become a big hit when it was remixed for the soundtrack of the movie Twister. The more danceable beat helps to sustain the song a bit more, but it still sounds kind of cheesy and repetitive to me despite being well produced. For me, the album also usually ends with In the Springtime of His Voodoo. The two extra tracks seem haphazardly placed there and don't quite fit the album's sound up to that point. Putting the Damage On, the first of these two tracks, also points in a different direction that we would see more in Tori's later albums, again with mixed results. Melodramatic ballads with exaggerated and sugary orchestral arrangements. Since they are the last two songs on a practically perfect album, I don't deduct points for that. And to be fair, they aren't bad songs, just unnecessary. Except for Twinkle, I can live without Twinkle. In short, for me, Boys for Pele encapsulates perfectly everything that Tori Amos represented in that early 90s alt-rock revolution. The vibe is feminine but with a wicked side, sexy but with a touch of danger, confrontational but also full of vulnerability and tenderness. And it takes the best of the more pop-oriented Little Earthquakes and the more intimate piano-focused Under the Pink and mixes it all into a final result that is both adventurous and totally accessible. My favorite tracks are Muhammad My Friend. This song grows from a tiny string of piano notes to a grand crescendo that always captivates me. It's impressive what Tori Amos can do behind the keyboard when she enters God mode. And then there's Father Lucifer. This song has some of the most beautiful vocal layering Tori has ever done. The bridge, where she creates layers of harmonies and melodies using her own voice, is delicate and intricate and solidifies this track for me as one of her best. Little Amsterdam, this is Tori's version of the blues, slow, dark, and with a homicidal edge. This is a story of women doing whatever it takes to survive in a small town, including sleeping with and possibly murdering the sheriff. It's both harrowing and empowering, but it definitely was not my bullet. And then we have Caught a Light Sneeze. This was the first single from the album and the first Tori Amos song I heard in real time along with the rest of the world. The harpsichord immediately made the song sound different from anything I had heard from her before, and that grabbed me right away. This track creates an incredible ethereal atmosphere and the production level is spectacular. It also has a grand sound that simultaneously feels intimate, something Tori Amos does very well. This track perfectly prepared me to immerse myself in one of the most beautiful albums I have ever heard. And to close it off, we have Professional Widow. This song has improved a lot for me with the 2016 remaster. The groove is clearer and the interaction between the harpsichord and the bass is funkier than ever. I remember the first time I heard this track and it seemed too strange even for Tori, but in a good way. Today it still sounds as unique and funky as ever. If you've made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you. Please leave your Tori Amos rankings below. Tell me why you agree or disagree with my list. I love having these types of conversations respectfully. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the page. I'm putting out a lot of different stuff. We're talking movies, we're talking music, and we're definitely talking Brazil and, of course, Star Trek. So if you like that type of stuff, please like and subscribe to the page. Thank you guys, and keep listening to Tori and sharing her music with the younger generations. She cannot be forgotten.